Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Chair, Opposition. I begin in the name of Allah, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. God and His prophets should be protected from insult. This proposition, indeed, this entire debate, is built on the premise of free speech, on the understanding that free speech is the starting point and that what remains is to debate its limits. But I reject this premise. Free speech is a liberal position. It is an ideological liberal position, not some neutral universal. So here's a frank memo to the liberals. Enough of the self-indulgence. You don't represent the default position. Billions of people around the world are not liberals. Stop feigning universality. Don't drop the pretense and let's have an honest discussion. It is of the most basic human civility to respect others. That is the starting point, not free speech. To insult others is to treat them with gross insensitivity, insolence, or contemptuous rudeness. Those who want to allow this, the onus is on them, surely, to prove that such depravity should be allowed. The idea of free speech is flawed in theory and politicized in practice. It is an idea impossible to implement, not implemented anywhere historically, nor even today, not even in liberal democracies. In justifying, for instance, as acceptable the most recent insulting film of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the White House said, "We cannot and will not squelch freedom of expression in this country." Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton noted, "Our country does have a long tradition of free expression. We do not stop individual citizens from expressing their views." Of course, leaders in Australia and Europe have said similar. Yet this is simply not true. Free speech does not exist anywhere in absolute form. There is no absolute freedom to insult. We have defamation laws, sedition laws, professional standards, journalistic standards about reporting about celebrities and politicians. In Germany, denial of the Holocaust is prohibited by law. In the UK, the Public Order Act makes, quote, threatening, abusive or insulting words an offence. In Australia, the Commonwealth Criminal Code makes it an offence for a person to use a postal or similar service in a way that reasonable persons would regard as offensive. As for in practice, Azhar Ahmed in the UK was convicted just last year for grossly offensive communications. He had commented on Facebook that British soldiers in Afghanistan should die and go to hell. In Australia, a Muslim man was convicted just a few months ago for letters deemed offensive which he sent to the families of dead Australian soldiers under the above-mentioned criminal code provision. These are but two of many examples that may be cited. Free speech, we may surmise, is used as a political tool, yielded selectively. Who decides about when and how to qualify free speech? Who decides when the sword is to be yielded? This is not about freedom. This is about how far power can go. It's about using power. It's about power using the notion of freedom to extend and enforce itself. Ultra-liberals may say here, look, we disagree with all these laws, with all these cases, and we affirm freedom of speech, unqualified, carte blanche. But is such a position really conducive to society? Would we accept white people using the N-word against blacks, or a person shouting fire in a theatre such as ours, or a student insulting his teacher, a child their parent? Everyone, all of us teach their kids to respect others, not to insult. Why? We can't have it both ways. Some forget perhaps that even in the Western tradition, free speech was upheld as a most basic value for specific ends, to allow profession of ideas, inquiry into truths, and the ability to account government. Does any of these noble ends, all of which Islam demands, I hasten to add, require the freedom to insult? Or does insult, in fact, defeat their very purpose? This is not about free speech. nor is it about just insults. Let's be honest. Let's be very honest with each other. The reason this debate is taking place is because secular liberalism imposed itself on both East and West by stealth. It dominated not by the strength of its values, but by the strength of its militaries. The Muslim world resisted and continues to do so. Unlike Christianity and Judaism, which crumbled under the force of secularism, Islam did not. Lands were divided and colonized, conquered and exploited. The Islamic State, the Caliphate, was dismantled, but the Islamic mind remained, so the resistance remained. It is the quest to break this resistance in which these insults come. The quest to impose secular liberalism, to consolidate the victory eternally, to agitate and provoke, to add insult to injury, to kick a man when he's down. There's no glory in that. There is no glory in that. And there's no glory in asking people to accept that. The free world seeks to dominate and impose, to extend its power, exploit others, and perpetuate its military, political, and epistemic violence, perpetuating Orientalist fantasies about Muslims being prone to violence, backward, unable to manage themselves in order to justify intervention. From propping up dictators like Mubarak and King Abdullah, to destroying entire countries through war and invasion, Iraq, Afghanistan, to unmanned drones killing little girls by bombing their homes on top of them, and on and on. Is the Western world really in a position to lecture others about violence or about values? Really? It is this broader context of provocation in which global Muslim reaction to insults come. It is here that our focus should be. As for critique, as apart from insult, then bring it on, honestly. Let me be very clear that stifling of serious debate is unacceptable. It's unacceptable in Islam. Critique of any ideas or beliefs is kosher. It's halal. It's allowed. Insults of any beliefs or people is not. Critique Islam all you want. Write in intellectual tones about why it is not the truth, about why the Prophet is not a prophet, etc., etc. Such books fill the bookstores in the West as it is. Go to one of your local best-selling bookstores and you will see these books. None of them have ever resulted in a riot, but to mock, to denigrate, to provoke, to agitate, that is something else, and that is unacceptable. For all people have red lines. All worldviews and cultures are sensitive with respect to what they hold dear. In Australian culture, for instance, Jesus, peace be upon him, may have become fair game, but the Anzacs are not. Modernity did not do away with sanctities, it merely shifted them from the religious to the worldly. To conclude, insult is not an acceptable mode of interaction for mature, self-respecting people. It is the modus operandi of the pseudo-intellectual with nothing to offer, no intent to engage, only projecting their own insecurities onto others. Insult offers nothing to society except hate and divisiveness. It is not required for the pursuit of truth, for open inquiry, for accounting governments, and nor does it allow for a cohesive society. It is unacceptable. All beliefs and sanctities, all should be protected from insult, including that which is most sacred to billions around the world, God and His prophets, peace be upon them all. This should be done in our present context by the elevation of values, not the imposition of law. Let me be clear about that. You cannot regulate civility. You cannot force people to be respectful. This is about elevating the human condition, reviving the sacred and the most basic of human decency, excavated by secular liberalism in the most hideous of ways. The fact that we're even still having this debate, to be entirely frank, is the ultimate insult. Thank you.